Welcome everybody. And as you can tell by the title of this vlog, that it's not our usual vlog. The garden is going to play more of a background to the story that I'm going to tell you. Talk to you about something that happened to me a couple of years ago. And I felt the real want to tell this story basically because it's a real part of my garden experience. In some way how I got here in front of you today. And as more towards the end, you'll get to see the more positive outlook and outcome that this story had.
Crime Stoppers, police say two men assaulted a man tending a garden plot in Union Park. It happened late Saturday night. The men remain on the run.
Well, this incident basically happened to me about 2 years ago here at the community garden. Now, I was coming to tend to my garden and it was later in the evening. It's literally probably one of the hottest days of the year here that day. I believe it was around 108 to 109 degrees that day, and the previous day I hadn't had a chance to come out and water, and it was a pretty hot day as well, into the hundreds as well, lower hundreds at that time. But at 108, 2 days without water, I was really concerned about the plants. I wasn't going to be able to get to watering the plants before I had to go to work, so it was something I had to do after I got off work. Now, I wasn't scheduled to get off work that late at night, but ultimately I ended up having to stay later because it was a lot busier. So at that time I had gotten off, it was pretty well dark out. So I arrived down here at the garden to tend the plants. I do have a bucket that I keep at the end of the garden plot. I use that bucket in order to make sure that I can water the plants at times that I have to be in the garden after the water shuts off. It's a community garden, so basically they have a water system here that only runs a certain time of the day and shuts off at night, and I believe at this time it's around 8:30 or so. Still kind of early, so that's why I keep the water buckets there, in order to make sure I have water if I have to come in and make sure I water certain plants or whatnot at times that they're needed outside of the time that the water is allowed at the park. So I arrived here at the park. It was late at evening. So when I arrived at the community garden, I came from this entrance back here. And the park itself has several entrances all around. From back this way it has a street access, and over here it also has a street access as well. It's a small little park right in the middle of the neighborhood, but I arrived basically back at this entrance, riding on my bike through this path here and headed up in through our front gate, where, as you can see now, I parked my bike right there. And I do believe when I came in, I parked my bike and I left the gate approximately open like that. And when I came in, I walked this way. Now, mind you, it was a lot darker, so there wasn't much you could see as far as out in this area. Now, there are certain lights that they have around in the park here, and there is, I believe, one right here, and then there's another one right here, right up above, basically where the sun is right now. But those two lights had given enough light for me that by the time I got right up to here, I basically could see in my peripheral vision the two guys walking right up through the trees and the playground right there, heading for the gate. Now, at that point in time, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I was all alone out here. I could tell that there wasn't really anybody nearby at all. So I just started to walk forward because at that point in time I was concerned about maybe them coming and try to take my bike. So as I got up to here, one of the guys had came through the gate right here, and I at that time had pulled the gate open, and he was basically blocking me from my bike, and at that point in time showed pretty much enough aggression by asking me questions like, what company are you from, what are you doing here, this and that, is this you growing all of this, and different questions, but being really aggressive about it. So at that point in time I just tried to make my way through the gate right here, and at this time he came more forward to me, but his other friend was right behind me right here. Now I explained to the guy that I was just here gardening and I wasn't wanting any problems with anybody, and that I just wanted to get my bike along on my way. And at that time he had nodded to his friend, and I think right at that split second I knew what was coming, but it just happened, and I was attacked from behind by the other guy and basically, you know, beaten on until I could make my way up through here. And at that point in time I did have my backpack on my back, and the other guy had grabbed me by the backpack to pull me back, and at that time they just started kicking and doing all sorts of things. You know, I don't want to get into that too much, just to say that, you know, they continued to attack me and do things all the way through as I tried to get my way up through to here. And at this point in time I tried to make my way into my neighbor's front yard and get to their door. By the time I got past that pole and was heading towards that front door, they decided to go ahead and head on out, and that's where you see this. All right, basically reeling in pain at that point in time, I was in the front yard of my neighbor's, and I started limping away, calling 911 at the time in order to get somebody out here for assistance, when someone else, a neighbor from the apartments over in this direction, had ran out and basically chased the guys off into that direction as well, and to basically find out where they were heading. I made my way over that way by the time the police officers showed up, and at that point in time I was probably barely moving. I was in pretty much a lot of pain at that point in time. So enough though to where I didn't necessarily feel at the moment that I was going to need an ambulance or any sort of thing like that. Police officer did basically give me assistance to get back to my house, and at that point in time I stayed at the house for a little bit, and basically few hours later was really in pain. I could barely even get myself up out of the bed, and at that time I had basically had my daughter give me a ride and take me to the emergency room at that point in time, where they basically just diagnosed a lot of inside bruising, some tearing of certain, and I can't say exactly if I can remember exactly, I'd have to look it up, but there was a lot of injury internally inside my chest and insides and everything like that, but luckily there was nothing broken, just some pretty good extension of my rib cage and whatnot, and the internal bruising, which put me in pain for several weeks. So as you can imagine, at that point in time, the news media,
with warmer weather outside, many go outside to take care of their crops. The simple act of gardening turned into an attack in Medford last night. Graham was out gardening his spot at Union Park when he says some men came up to him and beat him, his injuries requiring medical attention.
we're really all over this story. Now for me, I really kind of got involved with it because I wanted these guys caught. So, you know, it was really different. It was a whole different experience for me to be called up, have different reporters and news media want to do different interviews and finding out what happened. After that attack that night, I was really hoping on my local justice system, the local police department, and the local court system to be able to really take care of those two guys and get them put in their place behind bars. But what I really found out was I had a lot more to learn about what this process was about. Within just a day or two of the attack, the police had formed together a picture lineup, and I had taken a good look at the different people and found the suspects right off the bat. And having those pictures and having that identification, I really thought that really soon these guys would get picked up. Just days after this had happened to me, I had gotten information through local people in the neighborhood after I had identified them about who they were. Now, we made a call into the local police department to have them go and check out this place where we had eyewitness that they were there at that location. The local police took over an hour and a half to check out that phone call, and the guys had gotten away, taken off. They weren't there when they showed up. So still in a lot of pain after that attack, a week or so later, I had to get back to work. So I got back on my bike and I rode across town. And when I reached this intersection right here, just let me show you real quick. I was right here on my bike, looking across, heading down the street that way. But from over this way on this side here, 3 guys were riding on bicycles this way. And as they got to right there, both them and I both realized exactly who they were, and they realized exactly who I was. And they proceeded to stare at me and stare me down all the way across the intersection here. And they went up across the way right there, sat on their bikes, and sat there and stared at me and intimidated me and pushed to the point where I ended up luckily remembering that just right there is the local police department. I had went to that parking lot of the local police department behind me right there and approached a police officer, and I had told him that I had been attacked the week before. I was the one who was attacked at the Union Park Garden, and that my attackers were just right across the street. And at that time, he didn't really even take me seriously, and the guys were able to get away again. So eventually, these guys were captured. Now, the one guy, the first one, was caught at the local fair trying to get on a fair ride. He was pulled out by the police department, handcuffed, and taken away from the fair and brought to the local jail. And after he was captured, the other one had turned himself in, knowing that he was pretty much caught as well. Now the thing is that at that point in time, you think you find relief. They've been caught. It's now time to bring them and put them on trial. But even at that point, I still wasn't pretty safe in my assumption of what the justice system was going to do. I ride down this street most of the time, passing by the local jail plenty of times. It just happens to be kind of on my way home as I'm going. So in some way, during those few nights after these guys were captured, it kind of gave me a more secure feeling riding by here, knowing that the guy was inside that building there and inside of one of those cells. So one night, a few weeks after he was captured and brought here to the jail, I was heading home, riding my bike down the street, thinking everything was great. He's all set and locked up inside there. But no, just right down the street, he was just crossing the street, right in front of me. And at that point in time, I was wondering, wait a minute, how did he get out of jail and I didn't know anything about it? Down at the Jackson County District Attorney's Office, they have a really good office here program called the Victims Assistance Program. Now here in this office, they have people there who are dedicated to helping victims understand the legal process that is about to take place in the cases that they're involved in. Now for me, after that night, I had made a phone call to the Victims Assistance Office there, and I had asked them what exactly had happened. Now, they were pretty confused about it themselves. They were very quick to basically tell me that there was something very wrong with what had happened, and they got a hold of the district attorney, who had informed me that there had been some sort of clerical error. Somehow, some way, someone had filled out a spot basically saying that I had been informed that there was going to be a plea hearing. Now, this plea hearing actually happened very quickly, and it seemed as though it was just trying to be pushed through more than anything else. I had gotten a hold of some audio from the hearing itself, and the thing that surprised me the most, that not only did the district attorney, but the judge also had basically had no real concern for me as the victim at all as they were pushing through this proceeding. It just seemed like it was something they were just trying to get done and get him out and on his way. It was very troubling for me to be able to find that out, especially hearing in there that one of the only questions that was asked was whether or not he knew who I was when he attacked me.
Graham says he's still dealing with the trauma from a night in late June after he was brutally attacked by two men in Union Park. Police arrested both suspects, Eric Ivan Ramirez and Eddie Ramirez, weeks later. Graham finally able to breathe easy again.
It was the first day that I actually just got on my bike and rode across town. That was the first time I felt comfortable.
Biking home in the dark last week, Graham says he ran into one of his attackers, Eric Ramirez, on the street. They locked eyes as Graham sped away. District Attorney Beth Heckert says Eric Ramirez's trial was set for late September, and Graham did fill out a form saying he must be notified of any and all upcoming court events. But last week, Ramirez took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 3 years probation and a $200 fine, all without Graham's knowledge.
Basically a clerical error on our staff's part. There are going to sometimes be errors, and it's unfortunate. In this particular situation, it's very important often to victims to come into court and be able to say something to the judge and have the defendant hear what they have to say.
One of the real more difficult things for me to be able to deal with during this was understanding that victims in this situation don't really have much to count on or to have in their corners. Now, in an attack situation like this, there isn't even a personal attorney or anybody who would take on a case or even look at, or much less give me a conversation about anything, because there was no real money involved to be gained out of it. So in the long run, you're really relying on a program like a Victims Assistance Program to be able to give you any sort of information about what's going on. And after having something happen like this to you, you really, really expect that there's going to be some real consequences for things that are done to you. These guys basically got away with a third-degree assault charge, which carried with it a 30 days in jail and 3 years of supervised probation. Now, the one guy had basically spent that 30 days in the jail when they decided to go ahead and plea him out. They basically told him, you know, you've spent as much time as you're going to be in jail for being guilty of this. You might as well just plead out and we'll let you go now. So that's what happened to him. The other guy was a lot easier. He was able to wait for a trial for several months, nearly a year, and then able to just plead out himself. He did just a couple of days in jail, and they basically put him on 3 years probation as well. He got the same sentence. It's just that his time in jail, he was able to spend at home with his family, and you know, didn't really have to have the consequences that the other guy had. Check out this urban garden right here. Wow. That's really nice. So as I find out eventually, though, is that the only way to remedy a situation like that, when you're not informed or allowed to give your statement to the court in somebody's sentencing, basically you have to appeal to the judge of that case and ask him and say, hey, wait a minute, you violated my rights, and I do that ability to address the court about what had happened to me that night, in order to allow for the court to have on record, or at least to acknowledge the fact that I was really the victim. I was the person who was involved. After several weeks trying to appeal this with the judge, he had agreed that there was a violation of my victim's rights in the sentencing, and basically it set up a resentencing hearing. And basically at that point in time, I would be able to get in front of the court and address the court about my grievances with what had happened, not only about what had happened to me that night as I was attacked by these guys and how I felt about that situation, but also to be able to address the court in my grievance with its violations of my rights.
A Medford man says justice has not been fully served for him after he was jumped by two men in June. A judge sentenced one of the men to probation, and NBC5's Roma Villavicencio spoke to Graham about the sentencing. Roma?
Graham finally got the chance to let Eric Ramirez know what a terrible and negative impact the beating has had on his life.
I had so much planned for this summer, but now I have so much to deal with emotionally just to get back to where I was.
Graham says it was a big moment for him because he was not notified that Ramirez was released from jail early until he ran into him on the street last month. A very scary moment for Graham. Ramirez was released early because of a plea deal, but Graham says he's not satisfied. Jackson County District Attorney Beth Heckert says Graham was not notified about the plea deal because of a clerical error.
Now, in that sort of sense, it went down, I went to court. All right, so I'm kind of in the middle of editing, and what I wanted to do was kind of shoot a real quick scene to explain one more thing that kind of happened that I missed in explaining the story. Now, when the one suspect was sentenced inappropriately, there was a resentencing hearing that was first set up, and he was notified by his probation officer and his attorney that he had needed to be back into court for this resentencing hearing. Now, in the most sense, in these sort of sentencing hearings, they're done with a bunch of other type of hearings as well. So there are a bunch of other cases in the courtroom at the time, and so we were in with just a bunch of other cases. They had held us off more towards the end because ultimately we were waiting for the guy to show up for the hearing. Now the judge had to basically take over the courtroom from another judge in order to do this resentencing hearing, and when he had taken over the court and found that the guy had not shown up for this resentencing hearing, he was really, really upset and basically had decided to postpone the hearing for, I believe, a couple more days and issued a warrant. And at the time, it was really interesting was the fact that a warrant's usually issued at a certain amount, and he had really went high with like 100,000 or more or something like that for the warrant, because he was like, I want this guy in my courtroom. And then within the next couple of days, he was picked up by the police department, brought back to jail, and had to sit for another, I believe it was 5 days before we were brought back into court again. And at that point in time, they had given us our own courtroom, and basically me and all of the media in the back. And at that point in time, I was able to address the court. He did get an extra 5 days in jail because he just thought he didn't have to show up. Addressed the court, had my say, but in the long run, with the way the system works, and as I found out, like I said, these harsh realities of things that you have to find out about these things, was that the judge in the case basically has no choice in the matter. The legal system's pretty much set up. They have basically a chart, and it's just a chart. I'll show you right here. It's a chart that basically says this is what the crime is, this is what they have done, this is what their criminal history is, and it's like a math chart, one of those multiplication tables. Yeah, line one side up, go across to the coinciding side on the other, and where it meets in the middle is where they're sentenced. And in the long run, there is no other path around that for the justice system to do anything. So basically, all crimes are treated pretty much equal within the parameter of the crime itself. So my pleading to the court wasn't going to do anything to be able to change the outcome of what was going to happen in the guy's sentencing. So, as I said, there's a lot of things to have learned in the whole process. All in all, when it comes down to it, the whole case is pretty much done. It's been a couple of years now. They still have a year on their probation left. If I believe they, if they haven't done anything else to increase their time at all in between. I do know that they both have been arrested for other things since this happened to me. So, and I'm not too exactly sure what it was that they were arrested for on those things. But to me, it just seems like they will probably continue to be in trouble for their lives. And, it's really kind of sad that they'd want to lead their lives that way. They're young still, and hopefully they'll see the right way and be able to turn around their lives and be able to make something else out of their lives, I still think, a lot of ways, I wish there was more that could have been done. I wish that they had been sentenced to a harsher sentence. I still do kind of have the option to go to small claims court here, and I believe in Oregon allows me to basically claim, I believe, like $10,000 against each one of them. The problem with that is I'd probably never see any bit of the money. So in the long run, I just see it as the idea is if I spent that money to have that happen, then all I'm really doing is just trying to be a pain in their side for the next 10 years, or I believe it can be extended to 20 years or so. Trying to put liens and do that sort of stuff on somebody to try to get back at them for something they did to you. In the long run might just be kind of petty. I'm a big guy. I can get over some of this in the long run, as troubling as it was at the beginning. So in the long run, I just have to kind of not necessarily forget, but forgive and move on. And that's kind of the next point of this vlog, and the ultimate point of this vlog is about moving on. I was really, really fortunate that there were people there who really cared about what was going on. They were really worried also for themselves too as well. I mean, this happened in their community garden, so there was a lot of fear that kind of happened right after this. I mean, they were organizing together to be here together when they were doing things. The idea of just free access to the community garden didn't really feel like it was there for a while. So we came together and we were able to basically continue this project here and keep it going, and together we're going to continue doing that as well into the future. I'm very, very fortunate to have these people in my life through that process, especially. I was really, really excited to begin with that I came into this new community and I was really getting into gardening, and this new community garden just popped up. I mean, that was really, really exciting. I mean, I started a Facebook group for gardening to get together with people who loved gardening and whatnot. And one of the very first replies I got was from a local community organizer who had put together this project and was like, hey, you'd be real interested to know that we got a community garden opening up. And I was very interested. I was so excited that it was just right down the street, right down the block and everything. So, you know, when this happened, it was a huge shock. It was a huge shock, not just to me being the victim of what happened, but to the other people in this community who are really trying to make this project happen. So, you know, I just really want to extend a real thank you out to all of you. I hate really throwing names out there because there's going to be people I forget. But in the long run, I just want to say thank you so much to you who have been here and really helped me out. You know, it's a real blessing. So basically, after everything that had happened to me, I had to kind of come away with some sort of outlook of it all. Now, I was pretty scared and pretty out of my mind for those first several months, and wasn't even too sure if I would return to the community garden again. In fact, a lot of the things that I got going on into my alleyway gardens and the expansion of the garden, from the back alleyways to the rooftop peppers and everything, kind of came out of that time that I spent thinking about what could I do to expand the garden here at home so that I wouldn't have to go outside of the home anymore and do the community garden. I did return the next year, however, and started a garden there. I just couldn't get too serious into it, and you know, I kept going back. I kept working at it and everything, and was determined basically to not let all of this stuff get into my mind too much and keep me away from doing the things that I really enjoy doing the most myself. So in the long run, after that first year, I kind of got back into gardening with a lot more intensity, got more into the gardening community with different gardening groups and different people. And I found that ultimately it is the garden therapy that really, really helps drive myself back to feeling more normal after that situation. So I was even more determined to get into everything this year and get back out to the community garden to continue to do what I like to do. And at that point in time decided I'm going to go even one step further, and I'm going to prove to myself that I can be even more creative and bring this all to you as well. So I want to thank you all so much for coming along with me on this garden adventure that we've been on now for a couple of months into this year. We're going to continue going on forward, and if you like this episode, please hit the like button, give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments, anything to say at all, any questions or anything you thought that I might not or could expand on a little bit on this story, please ask me the questions down below in the comments. I would love to tell you about anything that you're wondering about. Please, if you can, hit the subscribe button and follow along with future episodes. See you again in the next Urban Gardener. And through people at the slip it off my bike that they have gotten a hold of all right now. Hey, what's up, guy? How you doing, buddy? How you doing? All right. He wanted to be in the vlog. He was really, really insistent upon it.